When did you stop helping your colleague at work? My coworker regularly talks about being a single mom and the hardships she faces as a result. I don't doubt it's been tough, but she annoys me with it because more than once she's implied I've got an easy life because I live with my kid's dad and he shares the responsibilities with me. At first, I tried to be understanding. Everyone has their struggles, and maybe talking about it was her way of coping. But as weeks turned into months, the constant commentary started to grate on me. At least once a week, she says she forgot to bring lunch, or that she didn't plan well and didn't bring enough food. Then she spends the rest of the day sighing dramatically and talking about how hungry she is, until someone inevitably offers her part of their lunch. It's never just me. I've seen her pull the same act with 3 or 4 other people, and she never offers anything in return. No snacks from home the next day. No coffee runs as a thank you. Nothing. She just takes and moves on like it's her right. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was genuinely struggling. Maybe her budget was so tight that lunch was a luxury she couldn't always afford. I usually pack extra anyway, partly out of habit, partly because my kid sometimes decides they're suddenly starving when I pick them up. So I shared without thinking much of it. But then I started noticing things that didn't add up. Over the last 6 months, she's gone on a holiday abroad. She's bought a brand new kitchen appliance, not because her old one broke, but because the new model had more features. She showed up one Monday with an entire new wardrobe, not a thrift store find in sight. She's in the process of buying a second car, and she's the only driver in her household. And just last month, she bragged about how much she spends on Christmas presents for her family, making it sound like a small fortune. This isn't someone who's choosing between rent and groceries. This is someone who has money. She just chooses to spend it on luxuries instead of basics. And while that's absolutely her right, it's frustrating to realize that the person I thought might need help is just taking advantage of everyone's kindness. The final straw came when she told me that another coworker had added her to their family subscription for a streaming service. She laughed about it like it was no big deal, like it was totally normal that people should share their stuff with her just because she exists. That's when it clicked for me. She wasn't struggling. She was performing struggling, and everyone around her was falling for it. So I decided I was done. I stopped giving her anything, no snacks, no drinks, nothing from my lunch. And that's when her behavior shifted from passive-aggressive to blatantly manipulative. The first time I noticed it was when I brought a pack of extra drinks for the week and stored them in the shared fridge. A little while later, she walked over there, opened the fridge, and then spent the next half hour loudly talking about how thirsty she was. It was so over the top, I almost laughed. We get bottled water for free at work, and there's a fully stocked tea and coffee station. She wasn't thirsty. She wanted my drinks. Lunch breaks got even worse. We'd all be sitting at the table, and if I had something sweet left over, a small chocolate biscuit, for example, she'd start sighing about how she wished she'd brought something like that to top off her meal. She'd go on about needing the energy, how tired she was, how lucky I was to have thought ahead. At first, I responded politely, usually with a small, "oh yeah," or "that's too bad." But once I decided I was done, I stopped engaging at all. I'd finish eating, pack my lunchbox, biscuit and all, and leave the table without so much as a glance in her direction. It's almost funny watching her face when I ignore her hints now. There's this brief flash of annoyance, then a forced smile as she pretends it doesn't bother her. But it does. I can tell. She's used to people giving in, handing over bits of their lunch or sharing their snacks because they feel sorry for her. But that sympathy disappears once you realize the whole struggling single mom act is just that, an act. After I stopped feeding into her little performances, I began to notice things I hadn't paid attention to before. It wasn't just that she complained, it was how she did it. It wasn't casual or random, it was calculated. She'd wait until people were settling down with their lunches, then sigh deeply and glance around the room as if she were trying to make eye contact with someone, anyone. It was her way of saying, "Notice me. Ask what's wrong." And when someone inevitably did, she'd launch into the same tired speech about how hard it was to be a single mom. Every single time. It wasn't even about lunch anymore. It was a script she'd memorized. I barely have time to breathe. I was so busy getting my kid ready I forgot to pack food. I wish I had someone to share the load like some people do. And then, the kicker, a pointed look in my direction, as if my having a supportive partner somehow meant I didn't deserve to be tired or hungry or stressed. The worst part was that people did keep falling for it. They'd offer her half their sandwich or a cup of yogurt, or even cash for the vending machine. And she'd take it all with a grateful smile, never once offering anything in return. Not even a, "let me get you back tomorrow." Just entitlement wrapped in faux humility. I started paying attention to her behavior outside of lunch too, and the pattern was everywhere. She'd forget her pen and borrow one, then never return it. She'd run out of paper and ask for a few sheets, then do it again the next day. She even once forgot her charger and asked if she could keep one from the office tech station, which she did. It wasn't need, it was habit. She was used to taking. It reached a point where I couldn't help but wonder if she even realized she was doing it. Maybe, in her mind, this was just how the world worked. People should accommodate her because she had it harder. But even if that were the case, it didn't make it fair. All of us had struggles. All of us were tired. None of us were walking around acting like everyone owed us something. What really sealed it for me was a conversation I overheard between her and another coworker. She was venting about her finances as usual, saying how expensive everything was and how every penny counts. Then, without missing a beat, she started talking about how she was thinking of getting a new tattoo as a treat for herself. Not a small one either, a full sleeve, custom designed. I nearly choked on my coffee. The woman who was supposedly too broke to bring lunch was talking about spending hundreds, maybe even over 1,000, on body art. That was the moment I stopped giving her any benefit of the doubt. This wasn't about money. This was about manipulation. She chose where to spend her money, and instead of prioritizing food or daily necessities, she chose luxuries, and then expected the rest of us to pick up the slack for her. And worst of all, she wrapped it all in this carefully constructed narrative of struggle, painting herself as the underdog so that people would feel guilty saying no. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I just kept doing exactly what I'd started doing. Nothing. I ignored her sighs. I ignored her comments. I stopped even acknowledging her presence when she tried to bait me into a conversation about how tired or hungry she was. And the more I ignored her, the more desperate her attempts became. One afternoon, she walked up to my desk holding a printout she didn't understand. She asked for my help, even though it was something she definitely knew how to do. I helped her anyway, and as I handed the paper back, she sighed dramatically and said, "I didn't have time for breakfast today." My stomach is literally eating itself. It was so obviously a setup for me to offer her something that I almost laughed. Instead, I just said, "That sucks," and turned back to my work. The look on her face was priceless, a mix of confusion, annoyance, and disbelief. I don't think she was used to being denied. It was as if the whole world had quietly agreed to feed and accommodate her, and now someone had broken the deal without warning. From that day on, our interactions became more strained. She'd still drop hints, but now they were sharper, more pointed. Some people don't know what it's like to really struggle. She'd mutter just loud enough for me to hear. Or, "It must be nice to have someone to rely on. Some of us have to do everything alone." I never responded. I wasn't going to be guilt-tripped into giving her anything. Not food, not sympathy, nothing. But I wasn't the only one who was starting to catch on. I noticed that others in the office had stopped offering her things as freely, too. People were still polite, still kind, but the endless stream of free snacks and shared lunches was drying up. Maybe they'd had their own realizations, or maybe they'd just grown tired of the same performance over and over again. Either way, things were changing. It was only a matter of time before her frustration boiled over. The more I ignored her, the more obvious it became that she wasn't just looking for help. She was looking for validation. And when she didn't get it from me anymore, she decided to try a different approach, turning everyone else against me. It started small. One afternoon in the break room, she sighed loudly and said to no one in particular, "Some people here have no idea what it's like to struggle. They just sit there with their perfect little lunches and their perfect little lives and don't care about anyone else." I knew exactly who she meant. Everyone did. The room went awkwardly quiet, and I just kept scrolling on my phone, refusing to take the bait. But that wasn't enough for her. Over the next week, I noticed her talking to people in hushed tones, glancing my way, shaking her head. The atmosphere started to shift. A couple of people stopped chatting with me during lunch. Another coworker, someone I'd always gotten along with, suddenly made a snide remark about how some people just don't know how to share. It wasn't hard to put two and two together. The thing is, part of me almost admired the audacity. She wasn't content with being ignored. She needed people to believe that I was in the wrong. It wasn't enough for her to lose one source of free food. She wanted to make sure everyone saw me as the selfish one. And for a moment, I wondered if it was working. Was I the villain now? The cold, uncaring coworker who refused to share a single biscuit with a struggling single mom? Then one afternoon, she crossed a line. We were in the kitchen, both waiting for the kettle to boil when she turned to me with a saccharine smile and said, "You know, I really envy you. It must be nice having someone to support you so you don't have to worry about things like groceries or bills." Her voice was just loud enough for the two interns nearby to hear. I looked at her, tired of the game. "I pay my own bills," I said calmly, "and I still managed to pack my own lunch." Her smile faltered. "Well, not everyone is as privileged as you." "Privileged?" I repeated. "You went on a 2-week vacation last month. You're buying a new car. You told me yourself you're planning a tattoo." Her face flushed deep red and she sputtered. "That's not the point." "No," I said quietly. "The point is that you're not struggling. You're just choosing to spend your money elsewhere and expecting everyone else to make up the difference." The room had gone silent. The interns had stopped pretending not to listen. Someone by the coffee machine looked like they were trying not to smile. She opened her mouth like she was going to fire back, but no words came. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the kitchen. After that day, things were weird. She didn't speak to me directly for almost a week. When she did, it was clipped and cold. No more passive-aggressive comments, no more sighs. But I could tell she was furious, not just because I'd called her out, but because I'd done it in front of witnesses. The power dynamic had shifted. Suddenly, she wasn't the poor, struggling single mom everyone felt sorry for. She was the woman who spent hundreds on luxuries but still wanted free lunches. I won't pretend everything was perfect. A few people still seemed distant, maybe believing her side of the story. But most of my coworkers quietly started treating me the same as before, and a couple even confided that they were tired of her antics too. One of them admitted they'd stopped bringing extra snacks to work because she always helped herself without asking. Another said she'd asked to borrow money just until payday 3 times and had never paid it back. It was oddly comforting to know I wasn't the only one who saw through her act. For months, I'd felt like I was going crazy, like maybe I was being too harsh or too unkind. But now it was clear. I wasn't the problem. Her manipulative behavior wasn't just affecting me, it was draining everyone around her. Still, she wasn't done. If she couldn't guilt trip me into feeding her, and she couldn't shame me into looking bad, she was going to try one more thing. She started acting overly sweet, almost performative whenever other people were around. She'd offer tiny gestures, a stick of gum, a single tea bag, and make sure everyone saw it. See? Her actions seemed to scream, I am generous. I do give back, but the illusion had cracked, and people weren't buying it anymore. The more she tried to rewrite the narrative, the more obvious it became what she was doing. And for the first time since I'd started this job, I felt like I had the upper hand. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped letting her control how I felt. If there's one thing I've learned about people like her, it's that they don't give up easily. Being ignored, being called out, it doesn't make them stop. It just makes them change tactics. And that's exactly what she did. At first, I thought maybe she'd finally gotten the message. She kept her distance, stopped hovering around my desk, stopped trying to bait me with comments about food or how easy my life must be. But then slowly, I noticed her creeping back into conversations, this time wearing a completely different mask. She started talking about how she was trying to do better, about how she was learning to budget, about how she was realizing she relied too much on others. It sounded good on paper, and I'll admit, part of me wondered if maybe she had learned something. But the more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't growth, it was performance. Every time she said something like that, it was in front of an audience. She wasn't telling me, she was telling the room. And the message was clear. I'm the one changing, she's the one being mean. Then came the kicker, a grand gesture that was clearly meant to rewrite the story. One morning, she walked in with a tray of store-bought muffins and set them down in the break room. Just a little something for everyone, she said loudly, making sure her voice carried. I know I've been taking more than I've given lately, so I wanted to give back. It might have worked if it hadn't been so transparent. The muffins weren't the point, the performance was. She hovered by the tray, waiting for people to thank her. She even glanced my way a few times, probably hoping I'd go up and grab one, proving that everything was fine now. I didn't. I walked right past them, grabbed my tea, and went back to my desk. She looked irritated, but she wasn't done. Over the next few days, she tried to orchestrate little moments like that. She brought in a small bag of candies for the team. She loudly offered someone half of her sandwich. Once she even made a point of saying she'd brought an extra snack, just in case someone forgot their lunch. All of it was calculated, all of it performative, and most people saw right through it. By now, even the people who had once fallen for her routine were growing skeptical. She's trying too hard, one coworker whispered to me during lunch. Another rolled their eyes when she offered them a piece of gum like it was some kind of saintly act. The shift was subtle, but it was happening. Her credibility was slipping, and then came the moment that sealed it. It was a Friday afternoon, the kind of day when everyone's just trying to get through the last couple of hours before the weekend. She was sitting with a small group by the lunch table, telling a dramatic story about how expensive everything was and how hard it was to make ends meet. Sometimes, she said, I don't even know how I'm going to afford groceries. But I guess some people don't have to think about that. Her eyes flicked toward me. I didn't look up. I just kept typing. One of the interns, bless her soul, tilted her head and said, Didn't you just say you're getting a new car? The room went silent. She froze for a split second and then laughed nervously. Well, yeah, but I need that. My old one isn't reliable. And the tattoo? Another coworker chimed in, deadpan. You said you were booking it next month. Her face turned scarlet. That's different. How? The intern asked innocently. I mean, if you can afford all that, I'm sure groceries aren't that big of a deal, right? I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She mumbled something about priorities and suddenly remembered she had a call and practically bolted from the room. The silence that followed was thick, and then someone snorted and the whole table burst into quiet laughter. That was the moment I knew the tide had turned. She wasn't the poor, struggling single mom anymore. She was the woman who complained about groceries while buying luxury tattoos and cars. And the best part? I hadn't had to say a single word. People had seen it for themselves. After that, she stopped trying so hard. The sighs, the comments, the guilt trips, all of it faded. She still came to work, still chatted with people, but the manipulative little games she used to play, they were gone. And when lunch rolled around, she ate what she brought, or didn't eat at all. No one offered her anything anymore. No one rushed to comfort her when she complained. The spell was broken. And me? I just kept doing what I'd been doing all along, minding my own business, packing my own lunch, and refusing to play along with her pity routine. It was amazing how peaceful things became once I stopped feeling guilty for someone else's choices. Weeks turned into months, and by then my patience with her had evaporated completely. I no longer responded to her sighs, her exaggerated groans about forgetting lunch, or her wide-eyed, "oh, I wish I had a snacks" performances. And something interesting started happening. The more I ignored her, the more dramatic she became. She started announcing to the entire break room that she hadn't eaten all day, or that she might faint without some sugar, casting little glances my way as if daring me to break and hand her something. I never did. Then one day, everything shifted. She was going on and on about how tight money had been lately, how she was barely scraping by, and how some people just don't understand the struggle. She said it loud enough that half the office could hear. But that very afternoon, someone pulled up her public social media story during lunch, and there she was, tagged in a fancy restaurant, holding a glass of champagne and showing off her new designer handbag. The room went silent. Someone even said, "Wow, that doesn't look like someone who's barely scraping by." She laughed awkwardly and tried to explain that it was just a gift and a one-time treat, but the damage was done. I watched her shrink into her seat as people exchanged looks. From that day on, the chorus of sympathy she had once relied on began to dry up. People stopped offering her food. The coworker who had added her to their streaming subscription quietly removed her from it. Even the free coffees people used to bring her from the cafe on Fridays stopped appearing on her desk. And she noticed. Oh, she noticed. The sighs became less frequent. The dramatic monologues vanished. She started bringing her own lunch. Not just lunch, but elaborate, Instagram-worthy meals packed into little containers. It was almost comical how quickly her habits changed once her audience stopped rewarding the performance. As for me, I felt nothing but relief. No guilt, no second thoughts, just peace. I'd spent too much time enabling someone who had no respect for the kindness shown to her. It wasn't about the food or the chocolate biscuits. It was about the entitlement, the manipulation, the constant taking without ever giving anything back. Now, when she sits across from me and eats the lunch she clearly packed herself, she still tries to make conversation, little comments about how hard things are, but I just nod politely and go back to my meal. No more shared snacks, no more sympathy. She's learned, maybe the hard way, that people eventually stop feeding the act when they see the truth behind it. And honestly, watching her finally fend for herself without anyone falling for the poor me routine has been more satisfying than any chocolate biscuit ever was. After the restaurant on Stories, the office completely lost interest in her dramas. No more sighs by the fridge. No more, "who wants to share some candy?" No more hints about hard times. People stopped playing along, and the pauses she used to use to elicit pity became simply awkward pauses. She even tried to revert to her old routine. She'd bring a box of cookies for everyone, loudly proclaiming that she was learning to be grateful. Everyone politely took one, said thank you, and left without making a big deal out of it. And that's precisely what disarmed her. Not the revelation, but the indifference. A role dies without an audience. A couple of weeks later, and the little things in life had also changed. "Lend me a pen, I'll give it back," was replaced by, "there's a shared cup of pens in the cupboard." The chargers returned to their owners, and stickers with names appeared on the food containers. It wasn't because they'd become greedy. They'd simply stopped being self-conscious about boundaries. No one felt bad anymore if they brought food only for themselves. She spoke to me once on the stairs. "Do you hate me?" "No, I just don't participate in things that are bad for me anymore." She nodded, without challenge, without tears. It seemed like for the first time she heard no as a final word, not an invitation to bargain. In the dining area, they talked about normal things again. A TV series, a deadline, whose child won the competition. Occasionally, she'd drop remarks about fatigue, but they sounded like platitudes, not hooks. No one picked up on it, and the topic dried up. The climax came quietly. On Friday, she carefully steered the conversation toward difficult times, but one of her colleagues asked breezily, "Oh, how's the car? Have you registered it yet?" And without any malice, she offered a link to budget lunches near the office. 2 simple sentences were more effective than any exposure. They demonstrated that everyone sees the reality and is only willing to help where it means helping, not sponsoring someone else's priorities. She thanked him, concluded, and pulled her container out of her bag, for the first time without a performance. From then on, everything returned to normal. She started bringing food, sometimes getting water from the cooler, sometimes going to the cafeteria. Someone asked her for paper clips and she gave them to them. The small balance that used to be broken by her mere sigh evened itself out when the pity bonus disappeared. As for me, I still have a simple habit, not explaining a refusal. I eat my own food, put away my lunchbox, ignore hints, and don't make excuses. No is a complete stop, not a prelude to an argument. And the strange thing is, as soon as you stop feeding the role, a lot of energy is freed up for life. If you ask how it all ended, it wasn't anything spectacular. No one defeated, fired, or laid off anyone. The system simply stopped working. And with it, the feeling of being someone's wallet, snack machine, or free therapy vanished. Everyone became responsible for their own affairs, and this finally became the norm.